Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money and taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. Whether we like to admit it or not, sometimes the number one thing holding us back from the success, the business, the life that we dream of is ourselves. And we don't even realize we're doing it, but self-sabotage, comparison, and just really overthinking everything can really hold us back and pull an e-brake on our journey forward. And that is why I wanted to bring on today's guest and really unpack mindset hacks that helped her reach her potential and help her clients do the same. And today on the show, we're welcoming Lindsey Mango. Now, Lindsey is a mindset guru who helps women change the way they think, act, show up, and take action so they can step into the woman that they're meant to be and create everything they want. Lindsey is passionate about this work because 6 years ago, she found herself with a life that looked picture perfect on paper, but felt like something was missing. She knew she was capable of having so much more in every aspect of her life, but even after taking tons of action, she found herself stuck in the same spot. It wasn't until she met a life coach that she understood that her mind was the biggest thing standing in her own way. And within 6 months, she completely changed her life. She left a relationship, she started a coaching business, and she replaced her corporate salary and created the life she used to daydream about. And today, she's built a coaching business that's generated over $2 million in revenue, serves hundreds of clients to create lives and businesses they're obsessed with, and she's just getting started. She's married to husband Chris Goodman, who was also on the podcast recently, and she has an 11-month-old daughter named Eva. She loves to travel, move her body, and continue to break the limits on what's possible in every aspect of her life. And the way that she carries herself, the way she presents, and just the thoughtfulness and intention of this conversation is something that you're going to love and dive into. Make sure you listen all the way through. There's so much gold in here, and post your biggest takeaway on Instagram, as we mentioned at the end of the episode. Let's hear from Lindsey. Hey, Lindsey, welcome to the show.
Hi, Shannon. I'm super excited to be here.
Super excited to be here for the second time because in full transparency, Lindsey and I recorded a bit of an episode about a week ago and it didn't take. So we are actually on our second recording, but we got a dress rehearsal out of the way. So
yeah, this one's going to be even better.
Exactly. You guys are in for a real treat. Lindsey, tell everyone who you are and what you do.
I am a life and business coach. I help women create lives and businesses that completely blow their mind. I actually live in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm married to Chris Goodman, who was on the podcast, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago by the time this comes out. So yeah, we're both coaches. We love what we do. And yeah, I'm super passionate about helping people create like completely limitless realities.
Love it. And if you haven't heard that episode with Chris, definitely go back and take a listen. It's from about, I want to say it's February 2023-ish timeframe, but definitely take a listen. You're going to get a lot of insight from that as well. So Lindsey, you would identify as a life coach, which a lot of people do. And I want to hear from you how you ended up in that position, because you didn't always study that type of stuff, or I feel like you kind of, like many of us in our careers, ended up there. Can you tell us a little bit about that origin story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to take it probably back further than most people do, but I played volleyball in college. That was like my thing. That's what I was passionate about. And I graduated and, I was like, okay, it was actually my first opportunity to get a job. Volleyball was like my full-time job my whole life. So I had a lot of like passion, intensity, commitment. And I was like, okay, we're just going to take this and we're going to get a job. I actually ended up with an accounting degree, but I didn't use that in my first job. I got a financial advising job. And after about 6 months, I realized that it was really a sales job. I wasn't really passionate about it. I really liked the freedom and the flexibility and aspects of the job, but I wasn't passionate about what I was selling and my heart wasn't behind it. So of course it didn't work out super well. I do have the thought, I can create success no matter what I do, but I just was like, this isn't it. So I went and got another job, and I worked at a dental office doing marketing. I just randomly met this dentist who owned a bunch of offices and just gave me this opportunity. I'd never done marketing before, but I was like, sure, I'll try it. So this kind of went on for, I would say, 7 years. I was kind of the typical millennial. I would get a new job and I would keep it for a year because that's what looked good on my resume.
Yep. We
And
expire
then,
after 1 to 2 years. Like our attention expires so quickly. We're like, all
right?
right, next
Yeah.
thing, next thing.
Yeah. Okay. This isn't it. Keep going. So
Yeah.
I just kind of kept finding myself getting another job and another job and another job. And again, I did HR, I did accounting, I did recruiting, I did marketing, I did financial advising. I mean, you name it, I tried it. And I just started to have this feeling like I was looking in all the wrong places. Like it felt like no matter what I did, I would always end up feeling the same exact way, that there was something so much bigger out there for me, that I was meant for more, and that what I was doing was just scratching the surface of that. And so through that, I actually, alongside those 7 jobs, I did network marketing twice. So I started network marketing, stopped, started again. And I got into personal growth. And that really started to like light me up. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. It started to show me all of these things and these areas of opportunities for growth and why I kept kind of getting stuck in the same spots. And it wasn't just in my career either. It was with my health. It was with my relationships. It was with money. It was with everything. And again, after changing everything so much and trying different things and through personal growth, I had this like moment where I realized that I was the common denominator to every single result in my life, and that I was, quote, the problem. But I was able to see that because I was the problem, that meant I was the solution. And this moment was super pivotal to me because it gave all of my power back to me, when for all of those years, I would say like I was a relatively committed, responsible person just in general, but I would find myself blaming things, right? Like it's the job, it's the boss, it's the PTO days or the lack thereof, it's my boyfriend, it's the workout plan. And so through this realization happened because I pretty much changed everything I could think to change under the sun that wasn't me. And then I was like, okay, there's only one place left to look, and
Right.
that is me. That again was just monumental for me. And I was like, okay, I have to change if I want to create a different reality. I just keep doing the same things, living out the same patterns. And that's when I met a life coach at a networking event for my corporate job. I was like, I don't know what a life coach is, but sure, I'll just meet as many people as I can for coffee. But I sit down at coffee with her and I was like, wait a minute, what do you do? And she tells me, and I just like pour my heart and soul out and like tell her, like, I just know I'm meant for bigger things and I keep getting stuck in the same place. Like, can you help me? And she was like, absolutely. So I walked out of that meeting and I decided to hire her, and it was really uncomfortable. It was like the first time I ever made an investment in myself. My family and my boyfriend at the time, they were like, what are you doing? Like they like weren't on board. But just
Like a
the
life
act
coach?
of,
What's a life
yeah,
coach?
like
That's so
what is,
weird. Yeah.
like, are you joining a cult? I'm confused. And the decision alone was so monumental because it was the first time where I stopped trying to like please my parents, and I stopped trying to please my boyfriend and please everyone outside of me, and finally just decided like, you know what? None of them agree with this, but I've got my own back here and I'm going to go all in on me. And that alone, before the coaching even happened, just changed me, because I was like, I just spent my life trying to please everybody else, which is why I kept creating a life that I didn't like. Like maybe other people were comfortable with it, but I wasn't. And then through coaching, I just was like, I'm like, wait, why don't we know this information? Why didn't I know that, like all these patterns and these things that are holding me back and the fears holding me back and how to get around it? And I mean, things completely turned around in like 3 months of working together. And
Wow.
I was like, I just woke up one day and I was like, this is what I'm meant to do with my life. And so I started my like coaching business. I built it while I worked a corporate job, replaced my corporate salary within 6 months. And then I was just kind of off and running. And that was 6 years ago.
Wow. And I want you listening to absorb a piece of Lindsey's story, which is what I think a lot of us struggle with, especially us Enneagram threes, we've talked about this, like the
Yeah.
plight of the Enneagram three, which is I am better because I am doing something. And
Yeah.
is also the, you know, I'm better because I'm doing, but also the more I achieve, the happier I will be. And also the idea that the habit itself is the solution, right? Like what I'm doing, change my behaviors, change my habits, change whatever, it will be the solution. It is, but it starts with the thought and it starts with the beliefs first.
Yes.
And that's the thing that like I struggled with too. So I also bounced around careers like every 2 years, and just like a scientific experiment, because that's how our brains work. I'm like,
Yeah.
I must change a variable.
Yes.
Like I must,
Not
one
going to be
variable will
me.
change
Yeah.
and then I will get a different result and then go, that wasn't the thing. Okay. It's kind of like that a speaker, like the really complicated, like Bose speakers where you're like changing every dial and you're like, that's not it. That's not it.
Yes.
That's not
Yes.
it. And then
You're
it's a
like, maybe I
constant
need to
struggle.
connect to Bluetooth. Like,
Yeah. It's this constant, like, maybe if I change one little thing here, one little thing there, I will get the results that I want. And in reality, it's like, no, you're the thing that has to change. And it's so complicated. It's so hard to absorb that. But it's also hard to, I want to talk about this. Like when you say I'm the problem, I know what you mean. But for those listening, like it's not self-blame. It's more like
yes.
responsibility,
Yes.
right?
Blame is not responsibility. I think that's a really
Right.
important distinction. Blame is, this is my fault.
Yeah.
Responsibility is, here's how I've contributed to it. So you'll know you're in blame if you feel shame. You're in
Right.
responsibility when you feel powerful.
That's perfect, because that's saying like I'm in control of what happens next is the responsibility aspect. It's more the
Yes.
forward looking. Like there's nothing you can do to change the past. You just have to own it and move forward with it, knowing that you are in the driver's seat. But when you went into the coaching environment, what do you think were the key things? Like you said, in 3 months, I noticed a massive change. Can you articulate how you felt that change? Because I know this is very difficult, especially for other coaches when they're marketing, to explain the
Yeah.
transformation. So can you kind of like help us see through that?
Yeah. So I think it's really important too. And this is a huge part of my story and why I do the work that I do. Like you're hitting the nail on the head, is because I think so often we think it's like a lack of desire or a lack of action that's keeping us from our results. And that was not the case with me. Like I wanted change so bad. And I threw spaghetti at the wall 100 miles an hour to try to create the change that I wanted. So it wasn't a lack of action. And that's kind of what you're hitting on. Where the shift had to happen was, I mean, there are a couple massive things. First, I wasn't making decisions based on what I really wanted. I was making decisions based on what was logical, what made sense, what I was supposed to do based on societal standards, my parents' standards, and they're amazing. I have the best parents, but like we all have our own limitations and we put our fears on other people. So whenever it came to, for example, getting a new job or trying something new, I wasn't making decisions based on what I really wanted. I was making decisions based on these rules that other people had for me, which makes sense on why I kept ending up like getting the result I wanted, or like, getting a new job and then being like, wait a minute, this isn't what I want. So that was one of the pieces. And then learning how to honor that, right? Even with the discomfort of other people having opinions and thoughts about it, and like being willing to like make my pride of myself and how I felt about myself more important than how other people felt about me. So like that was like one big component. So again, it didn't matter how much action I was taking. If I was never truly making decisions based on what I really wanted, just pleasing other people, of course I wasn't going to end up with what I actually wanted. Some other pieces were just understanding like fear and discomfort. I mean, fear is something that is meant to keep us alive and meant to help us survive as humans, really useful when it comes to that. But what I didn't realize at the time was that was guiding so many of my decisions, not just with what other people thought of me, but what was safe. What was I supposed to do? What was the financially like secure decision? And there's a time and a place. I know you're a money person, so am I. But I just wasn't seeing, I was making all of these decisions from fear, from lack, from insufficiency. And I didn't understand, even though I was trying really hard, why I wasn't getting anywhere. And now, and when I hired my coach at the time, I started to understand like, oh, I'm like playing in this tiny box instead of like breaking out of it and making all these uncomfortable decisions to create what I want. The other thing was really my identity. And I say this from the standpoint of like, I always say who you're being or who you're becoming. So who I was being was someone who was letting fear guide my decisions. Who I was being was someone who was trying to willpower myself into things and force myself into things instead of truly creating desire and wanting to follow through on things, which created like commitment that would go up and down and up and down and up and down. So I really had to learn how to change the way I saw myself, how I felt about myself. And in turn, that guided even some of the actions I took were similar. And I think that's where, especially as Enneagram threes, like we're action takers, we're like, but wait, I'm going to do the same things. But the way we do the things ends up different. It feels different because of the thoughts and the feelings and the identity that's driving it. And so that was a huge shift that I made, was just changing the way I saw myself. I saw the world and the way I made decisions. And even though I still took lots of action, the action I took was more consistent. It was from a different place, and it ultimately created very different results. And sometimes I think that can feel very woo for people. And like, and I know for me, again, I'm a big action taker. So I might have heard this and been like, what? Like, what are we even talking about? But I think of like your identity, your thoughts, your feelings, your energy as like BO almost. Like it's like this thing that it's like when someone walks in a room, you can feel them, like how they feel, the way that they show up. And this is so important in our businesses too. And it's like we're all doing the same things, but some people it's working really well for, and some people it's not working at all. What's the difference? We're all doing the same things. It's the way they're showing up. And that's really what I'm talking about here is changing your identity, changing who you are and how you're showing up. And that in turn changes the results that you get.
Yeah, it's basically don't change the checklist, change who's filling it out.
Yes.
It's
That's such a good way to say it.
it's the idea that like, well, if I did all the things, I followed the recipe. And I go,
Yep.
it's not about following a recipe. There's just this like intangible thing that drives the difference.
Yes.
And you mentioned like, okay, it's working for some, it's not working for others. And that breeds a lot of resentment, jealousy, and comparison. And I want to touch on this because it's something a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is how do you battle the comparison trap? Do you see this with clients? Do you struggle with it yourself ever? And let's talk about, how you can maybe navigate that and maybe use it to your advantage.
Yeah. So absolutely, I struggle with that. I'm human. And like you said, my whole life and a lot of my work has always been untying my personal value from my achievements. So my brain, when I don't pay attention to it, it loves to like jump on the bandwagon of like achievements. Let's measure myself and my achievements up against other people. So it's always like a sports game in my head that I have to kind of unwind. So absolutely. And this is one of the biggest things I think business owners and humans struggle with now, and especially with social media, right? I think that I've heard of studies just in general that people are sadder, more depressed than ever. And I think this is a huge part of it. So I think there's a couple of things. I think the first thing is, in dealing with it, is having compassion for yourself. I think sometimes when we compare, we get really hard on ourselves and we like make ourselves feel bad for doing it instead of kind of like the thought I just shared, like, of course I do it. I'm a human. I have a human brain and this is what we do. And not making it like this problem or that there's something wrong with you. Because again, our brain likes to operate in survival. So it thinks the faster we are, the better we're going to survive. So if we compare ourselves, then maybe it will help us improve and then we can survive or be, whatever. So it's just a natural way that our brain works. So again, first I think is compassion and just not making it a problem. Like, of course you do that. The second thing is I always say that the only reason that you're seeing them from the like lens that you are is because you're spending your mental energy selling yourself on how great they are and how not great you are. You're also seeing their highlight reel and all of that. So you're not seeing all of the humanness that's happening on the other side. But it's like, imagine if you spent, I think about a relationship. This usually happens at the beginning. You spend all your time selling yourself. And when I say sell yourself, just like focusing on all the things that you love about this person and how amazing they are and all of that, right? Relationships end up changing oftentimes because you stop doing that and you start focusing on all the ways that they are falling short. Right. And so the same thing here is you're essentially just focusing on all the amazing things about this person and all the ways that they're crushing it. And for every moment that you do that, you're not focused on your own brilliance and all the amazing things that you're doing and you're accomplishing. So I think it's just a simple shift in focus and just focusing on and celebrating and looking at all the things you've accomplished and selling yourself that hard on how awesome and amazing you are. And then I think the last piece is like the flip side of that. Again, we see highlight reels. And so a lot of times we assume that they don't have the human fears, thoughts, failures, experiences that we do, but that is never the case, ever. And I think that's kind of the sad piece of social media is, I don't think it's social media's fault, but I think we often just assume when we're watching people that they just don't have that human side. And then we make ourselves feel bad for that. And of course they're humans. Of course they fail. Like I don't know when this is going to come out, but I just started a 100K in 30-day challenge in my business and I'm bringing people along. Like I'm sharing all of my drama and like all of the thoughts I have and the coaching that I do on myself every day, the things that I try that fail, the things that I do that succeed. And it's blowing my mind how many people are joining and how many people are like, oh my gosh, thank God you have a human brain like me, because they were putting me on this pedestal. And what they do is they make this, or like anyone you admire or you compare yourself to, you put them on this pedestal, you assume that they don't have the same failures and thoughts you do. And what you do is you set yourself up to create this unachievable goal. You will never suck the humanness out of you. You will never remove that. So when you start to see that these other people are just like you, then you realize you just have to do scary shit like them and uncomfortable stuff. And that's going to be how you create your result, not removing that piece. So I'm kind of getting off basis here, but I think with the comparison, I think it's just like, don't ever assume that other people, even if you're only seeing successes, like that was built on a pile of failures. They're having the same human experience you are, and to not make that a problem.
I totally agree. And I subscribe to this idea of like, take inspiration, but not too much influence. So like, I look at what someone has, like if it's the have not, right? Type of comparison where it's like, oh, I want that house. Oh, I want that car. I want this thing. And it's like, do you? But also if you really do, it's a question of, or I want what they have. I immediately flip it into, how can I get closer to them or find out how they did it or learn from them? Or how can I get into their ecosystem to find out more about this? If it really is somebody that's worth finding inspiration from. Because if it's someone who is like, just has something that you're jealous of, I'm like, then what are you following them for? Or what are you watching them for? And then if it's to learn from them, then learn from them and find a way to do that in a healthy way. I just think there's a lot of people who are almost like voyeurs of, it's almost like self-inflicting comparison where I'm like, why are you following them if all they do is make you feel like crap? And it's okay to hit the unfollow button.
I think that's a great way to say it, because I also think like when it comes to inspiration, usually you're inspired when you believe it's possible for you. It feels like jealousy when you feel powerless and you feel like it's not possible for you. So I agree. Unfollow the people. Like I always think of social media like my house. I'm like, would I let these people in my house? If they speak this way in my house, would I want them in it? No, I'm going to unfollow them. But on the flip side, I also think you can use jealousy as an opportunity and be like, where am I telling myself that I'm not capable of creating that? And that's my work, because if I'm telling myself that, then I'm never going to create that. That's the only reason I feel jealous, because if it really was possible and simple and easy for me to create that, then this wouldn't be a problem.
Right. And so Lindsey and I were chatting off the air at one point about the personal development space. And I asked you an initial question, which was, who do you take who influences you in the personal development area? And I loved your answer to this, because it wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But it's like, so who are your main influences in the personal development space? And I want you to answer that question so everyone can hear it.
Yeah, I said I feel like not really anyone. And it's not that I don't like there aren't people on Instagram or like podcasts that that inspire me, but I practice a whole lot of I don't know if this is even a word, but like I say like constraint. So basically kind of keeping the main things the main things. I think so often we follow people and we look outside of us coming from this place of I don't have the answers. I'm lacking something. I'm missing something. And you're never going to find inspiration or create the result that you want trying to fill that void with someone outside of you. And so I always just pay attention to if I'm truly following someone just because they inspire me, it makes me feel good. Like I just learn things from them, that's great. But I really keep myself from looking and following people from this place of like, I'm doing it wrong because that's never going to lead me where I want to go. And so I think the other thing is that I remember, and this is what I teach my clients, show my clients, represent in the world, that the way you become a leader in business or a leader in your industry isn't by doing what everybody else is doing. It's by following your best answers and what's in alignment for you and like the crazy ideas and the uncomfortable things that you would do, not what Susie on IG is doing because she said this is how you create a successful business. I'm not saying that's not valuable, but again, just pay attention to all the places that you're doing that from, like just thinking you're not good enough. So again, I just keep it very limited because then it challenges me and forces me to create from my own mind instead of leaning on everything external to create things for me.
Yeah. And I think it's a mix of both. Cause I think that folks who are really early stage, like let's say someone's an aspiring life coach and they're just getting started. I see no problem with, absorbing everything out there and seeing what sticks for you, what you relate to, what
Absolutely.
clicks with you, and then making it your own and letting it evolve over time by taking those little pieces. It's almost like I started comparing this to going to like Target. And I go, it's like going to Target with a list or without a list. And it's like if you let yourself loose, this could be in the personal development like area, this could be in a mastermind, this could be anything. But if you go, I don't know what I want here, but I'm just going to explore. I'm like, okay, you're going to spend a lot of time, energy, and potentially money. So let's go in with a list of like,
Yeah, I
I
love
want,
that.
I want to walk away from this, or I'm really intentional about like, let's say I follow somebody and I'm like, I really want help with team building. I know exactly who I need to be watching, whose content I should be absorbing right now and whose ear or who should be in my ears right now. If you go in with the intention of like, I need this as my souvenir from this content, then I feel like you can, it creates almost this like healthy barrier. So you don't absorb a lot of extra stuff. You're like, no, I know what I
Yes,
came in here for. And I'm not
I
going to be
love
tempted by the
that.
Target aisles.
Yes, it's so good.
It's so challenging though, as much as I say that, it is so challenging to not get caught up in all this stuff too, because I'm human as well. Like the comparison traps, the like, how is their marketing so good? How are they doing all these things? And my answer to that is ask them.
Yes.
If you
Learn
and
from them, get in their rooms, like
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And on that note, like mentorships and like looking at who's ahead of you, there is a lot to be gained from that. But I love your answer in the form of like, I take inspiration, but not too much influence from these people because I want to do things my way. I don't want to be the like cheaper alternative to like a Brendan, or I don't want to be associated with like, I use their
Yes.
method or their framework. I want to have my own thing and be known for that. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that because I think a lot of people are trying to take what's working, adapt it, but like, I feel like they're not going that extra mile with making it truly their own. Like, what is your advice to your clients? Because I know you coach a lot of business owners too, but it's like,
Yeah.
how do I make this my own or like have my own voice, my own flavor, and showcase my
Yeah.
uniqueness?
So I think that the way you explained it with the target list is such a great way. Like, I'm definitely not just saying like, just don't learn from anybody.
Right.
Absolutely. Learn from people that, you are inspired by and you want to learn from. But I was just thinking in my mind, like an analogy of it's like you want to have it almost as like the outline of like a coloring book. And like, then you get to go in with all of the colors you want to choose and like color it in, color outside the lines, like draw extra stuff on the page. So I think of it like you use it as guidance. Use it as don't think of it. This is where people get stuck. don't think of it as there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. This is where you start to get very black and white. And my brain loves to work like this. It's like, okay, this is the right way. And so we're not allowed to like go away from this. My brain likes to be a rule follower. But again, that's what kind of sucks your personality and your inspiration and your uniqueness from it. So I think that's the first thing, is just notice when you're looking at it as right or wrong, and move to a place of seeing it as this is a suggestion. This is one way that I can do it. What do I like about it? What do I don't like, not like about it? And what do I want to implement that's my own? I just wrote this the other day that I think creativity, everyone has it. I don't think it's like something that only certain people have. That's a story a lot of people tell themselves. I believe that creativity happens when we are vulnerable enough to put our ideas in the world. And so people who are very creative are just willing to be vulnerable a lot and let these ideas that they have come through, no matter how uncomfortable it is. The people who don't do that a lot, they don't feel creative. So I like to think about it like how to make it your own is getting connected to what kind of ideas do I have that hit me, and then I like shut down, or like crazy things. I'm like, oh, I might try this, or I like this color, or I like this technique of reel or post style. And then you tell yourself that you can't do that, or you're not supposed to, or you're not big enough to do that. Like that's the guidance that's going to help you make this your own. That's the like creativity that's going to help you put your spin on it, your different perspective on it. That's going to create your own little like corner on the market.
Yeah. And I think that also helps with it helps with those inner thoughts of like, it's like we call it the imposter syndrome, right? But it's the idea that like, well, who am I to do this because I'm not qualified, or I don't have the following, or I don't have insert here, right? I don't have, or I don't do this. That addresses that as well. Cause it's like, no, you shine with your own uniqueness and you can do those things, but you have to become the person who does these things. Yes. And going back to that, we talk about like thoughts and beliefs are what holding you back, almost your identity. I don't know if that's the word you would choose, but like how you identify and how you show up. And we were talking before about the habits don't make you, because you were talking about like, I was doing all the right things. I was working out. I was doing all the, you might do all the morning routines, all the meditations, all the lemon water, whatever the hell you did. Right. But are you the person who looks forward to those things? Are you the person who makes that work for you? Are you creating a mental environment where that stuff feeds you versus it's on the checklist?
Yes.
And that was like, that was a huge takeaway for me from our prior conversation. And I want to go into that a bit. Like, what does it take to become that person? Like, what kind of process do you need to go through to get there?
Yeah. So this is like a huge cornerstone of like what I teach and what I learned. Again, because I was doing all the things and I'm like, why isn't it working? People always think I have to make the money, I have to have the body, I have to have the results in order to start showing up as the person that I want to be. So I can't show up as the powerful business owner until I have more clients or I make more money, for example, right? But what they don't realize is that just keeps you doing exactly what you do now with the same kind of energy behind it. And that just keeps you stuck in a cycle. The solution and the answer to creating what you're asking to create is being that person ahead of time, meaning showing up the way you would if you were making the amount of money that you want to make in your business. What decisions does she make? How does she show up? How does she treat her money? How does she market herself? What does she say? How does she treat her personal life and her body, right? Like whatever it is, like all of those components, they're going to be really uncomfortable to take action on now because your brain's like, wait a minute, but we can't just say those things online. And I'm not saying you don't lie about what you're making or anything like that, but I mean, how bold would you be if you were making the amount of money you wanted to make and being that bold now? That's how you become that person right now. And that's how you ultimately create what she has. And so like that component, how I walk people through that is first you get clear on the vision or the outcome that you want. And you get clear on what that version of you is like how does she interact with the world? How does she think about herself? How does she carry herself? What does she do? And then we get to work in executing that, no matter how uncomfortable that is, because that is like the weightlifting of becoming your future self and creating what she has. Like at first the muscle is going to be really weak and you're going to be like, oh God, this is really uncomfortable showing up and doing these things. But that is the only way that you grow strength within that muscle and you step into being that person. Then ultimately it's inevitable that those results will happen for you.
Yeah, I've noticed that even in my own business, like the major difference when I was working with my mentor, he would always say, like, what's the difference between you charging $1,000 and you charging $3,000? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I just kind of went, what more do you need to do to charge more or to have more clients or to do what you want here? Like, what more do you need to do? And I'm like, I literally have to do nothing else. I'm doing all the things. And he's like, exactly. So who does Shannon need to be to charge this much money?
Yeah.
He actually asked me that. He's like, so what is the thing you have to do now? And I was like, confidence. And he's like, yep. And it's like, how do you actually cultivate the confidence? It's this kind of cycle of, I believe results breed confidence, but sometimes you have to almost lab grow confidence, like as opposed to growing
100%.
it.
Yes. Well, because you're not going to get the result without the confidence, right? So if
Right.
Shannon's always waiting till she is being paid $3,000 to start charging $3,000, she's never going to get paid $3,000, right?
Right.
It's just like you create this cycle that you're stuck in. So I always love the idea that confidence isn't something that people just like have or don't have. And I don't actually like, I think, yes, results can help, but I think that confidence comes from courage.
Ooh, yeah.
So like confident people, they're not confident necessarily because of their results, and they help, right? They can be evidence. Use that when you have it. But like if you do courageous things and you have your back, no matter what happens, you will be confident, because really at the end of the day, the thing that we are most afraid of is a feeling. And it's the feeling of like vulnerability or whatever discomfort you would feel by offering something for $3,000 and having someone say no, or having them go, what the heck? Like, that's crazy. I would never pay that. That discomfort is what you're trying to avoid. And if you learn to feel like be okay with those feelings, then you will be willing to do and try anything. And in turn, you will create whatever results that you want. And so all that's required is taking the courageous action and being willing to ask for the $3,000, being willing to see what you provide from that level of value and put yourself out there and being willing to feel those emotions. And when you do that, what you teach yourself is, I have your back no matter what. I have your back when you try something, you fail and you fall on your face. I have your back. We're going to be okay. We're going to make it through. And that right there is how you feel confident.
I love it. And because people say, I don't have the confidence, and it's the constant chicken and the egg, right? It's like, what comes first, confidence or results? And they both feed each other. It is super challenging to navigate that.
Yeah, it really is. But I just, again, if you're there, just go, okay, what's something courageous that I can do?
Yeah. I
Like,
love that. It's like, how can I flex that muscle or like get some reps in on courage?
Yeah. Or like, what would that confident version of me do? She would ask for the 3K. She would do whatever. And then you follow through on that.
Yeah. And I think also you can use I like to use track record to breed confidence as well, and use reflection. Cause sometimes it's looking in the dashboard at who do I need to become, but it's also looking in the rearview mirror and going, how far have I come? Reminding yourself of how far along in the journey you are, and reminding yourself that the things that are causing me overwhelm right now are the things I once prayed for.
Yes.
And that is a thing that Jasmine Starr said at a speech that she gave. So I have to give her credit for that. But I was like, damn, when I heard that. And I said, you know what? You're right. I need a reminder of that humble, girl who was playing around in Canva 4 years ago, trying to make an Instagram post and like struggling and hoping to make her first 10K, let alone 100K. And I go, you know what? You know what? I did that. I can't, then I can do this. And you use your own, you kind of like remind yourself of your confidence by almost looking back on your achievements and saying, I can trust myself because I did this. My track record is good. I can rely on myself. And I think that's a big part of it too, is reminding yourself of how far you've come, because we don't do that enough.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. When I said results don't create confidence, but I really think that they do when you use them when you use them in a powerful way, right? Instead of focusing on what you haven't accomplished and the results you don't have, you don't need that to create confidence,
Right.
but you can create confidence by changing your focus on what you have created and what you have done. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Gap and the Gain, but it's very good. It's all about our brains are wired to focus on where we are and comparing that to where we want to go. And if you always do that, you're always falling short, because everyone listening, you and me both, we're all goal oriented. We hit a mark, we set a bigger goal, right? So if you're always measuring that, you're always falling short and it's never good enough.
I absolutely love that, Lindsey, because it's just so important. I think that too many people struggle with this, but a lot of people struggle with this, but can't articulate it or don't ask for help with this particular thing. I hope that you listening, you can latch on to one of these things and go, yeah, you know what? I kind of do feel like that sometimes, because it's something we all struggle with all the time. And it sounds very woo woo, because like you and I are both like Enneagram 3, probably high achievers, and going like,
oh yeah,
life coach, who are we becoming? Like what, what weird thing did you drink, or like
yeah.
drink the Kool-Aid? What cult did you join? Or like the MLM stuff? It's like, what are you doing? But it's so, I've learned this too, as someone who's very logical and practical. Like, it's true, because it's how you energetically show up. You can see it in real life. It's actually proven. Like you said, you walk into a room, different people walk into a room, different people show up on social, different people achieve these different things. And you realize that it's just different. They show up differently.
We're all saying the same things, right? Like, I like to think about it like that, because I agree. I think at first it took me like banging my head against the wall for 8 years to like be like, okay, maybe I'll like listen to this. Don't let that be you. But I think when I thought about it, and when I look around in general with like coaches or whatever industry, right? It's so amazing. People can start their business and be whatever they want to be. I love that. And it's like, what's the difference? We're all saying the same things, right? Like, we all essentially have similar messages. I remember one time, like, I forget who I was watching, but I was like, I say stuff like that. But this girl was like on stage, and I'm like, the thought I had was like, what's the difference between her and me? I'm like, she just believes her message is valuable enough to be in the hands of millions of people. I'm not believing that my message is that valuable, or that what I have to say is that powerful. That's the only difference. And she does courageous things like getting on stage and all of that, right? Like, okay, so that's the only difference between us.
I love it. This is your reminder, guys. Get on a stage, go do a courageous thing today. Do something that is going to make you uncomfortable, and then flex that muscle of courage, because that's so important. Lindsey, I've so much enjoyed this conversation, and I can't wait to chat with you again. How can people find out more about you and what you have going on?
I loved being here, and I'm so glad we got to do it twice.
Yes.
So I have, my Instagram is like where I hang out. It's Lindsey Mango _ spelled with an EY. And then I have a life membership where I teach like all of these foundational coaching concepts to help you really bring it to light and understand. Like, I think of it like your brain is probably the biggest thing holding you back. We're going to turn your brain into your greatest asset so that you can like take the actions you're already taking and just put rocket fuel behind them. And that membership is all about creating a life where you have everything that you want. So we go into detail on money. We go into detail on relationships, on finding your purpose and getting started and putting that out in the world, as well as health. So I like joke, it's like the Netflix of personal growth. And then I also have like a business mastermind. I'm going to be opening up a business membership. So if I don't have links for all of that, but I have a link for the membership. It's lindseymangocoaching.com/life. But again, just go to my Instagram. You'll find all of the things there. I'm always on there talking about it. So yeah, I'd love to connect.
All right. And a reminder again, the handle is, make sure I got it right, Lindsey Mango _ I'm going to make sure I tag her when we post this, and definitely take a screenshot. Let us know what one of your takeaways was. I know you grabbed a few. So let us know if you have a takeaway from today's episode. Share it on your Instagram story and tag at Shannon K. Weinstein and at Lindsey Mango _ Lindsey, thank you again for hopping on the show today.
Thanks, Shannon. I had so much fun.
Did you enjoy this episode but want to explore more on this topic? Or maybe you have questions for me and our guests. One of the best parts of doing this podcast is interacting with you in the Keep What You Earn community. This community is a completely free resource for you to ask questions, chat about our episodes, and to connect with us on our monthly calls. Yes, all for free. We host this community on a platform called Circle, so you won't be bogged down by Facebook notifications or get your posts buried in the mix. So click the link in the show notes to join us in the community right now. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.